Hello students and welcome to the next lesson in our AS Psychology course. Today we're going to be looking at the factors which affect obedience. Obedience. Obedience is when you directly follow an order from an authority figure without personally changing how you're going to behave. There are a number of factors which can affect how obedient someone is going to be, and we're going to look at them in this video. The first of which is the amount of responsibility. In a situation, if you have very little responsibility, you're going to be more likely to perform an action which someone has instructed you to do. However, as levels of responsibility increase, levels of obedience are going to drop. This is because you are going to be judged on your actions and you're going to be given consequences for your sole actions. So as a result, you are going to be making the right choice on your behalf because no one else is going to be able to take the rap for it if you do get in trouble. This is shown in Milgram's experiment, which we looked at in the last video, and you can visit that by checking the channel's playlist. Milgram's agency theory. Milgram explained that people's levels of obedience are going to change depending on their level of social conscience. People can be in two different states, the first of which is the autonomous state. Here, people are going to assume responsibility for their own actions. The person's values will guide them to behave morally and in pro-social ways because they're acting autonomously or just for themselves. The other state is the agency state. This is when individuals are going to have diminished responsibility because they're going to work as agents of others, hence getting the name the agency state. They feel less guilt and conscious of their own actions because someone else is going to be taking the rap for it, and then as a result it's going to lead them to act in more antisocial ways. In his experiment, they were actually agents because they were acting as agents of the experimenter who was instructing the people in the experiment to increase the voltage on the actual machine, which is going to administer a more powerful shock. Legitimate authority. People who have high levels of legitimate authority are going to be then giving high levels of obedience to the people if this figure is credible. Milgram conducted a variation of his study where the experimenter did not have a lab coat on, and as you could presume, the levels of legitimate authority weren't there because the experimenter didn't really seem like a real experimenter and more as just a random person who was telling you to shock people. As a result, levels of obedience dropped because there was no legitimate authority. LATEN'S social impact theory. Now, LATEN'S social impact theory is also viable for a factor which is going to make someone resist conformity or make them conform. However, it can also be applied to obedience. The immediacy effect in LATEN'S social impact theory states that the closer a person is in both proximity and time, the more people will then obey him or her. So if someone is much closer to you physically, you're more likely to obey whatever they have to say as opposed to them standing 20 meters away. This was shown in Milgram's variation of his study, where people were using a phone to make a link of communication between the experimenter and the participant. This created a buffer, and as a result, the proximity between the person and the experimenter was not there. So as a result, levels of obedience dropped. The process of gradual commitment. More people will obey to a task if it gradually increases its levels of immoral actions as opposed to one which is immediately immoral. This way, each time they conduct an immoral act when they're obeying, it doesn't really seem as bad as compared to what just a standard act would be. This is what they did in Milgram's study. So in his experiment, they had a machine which had varying levels of shock intensity. It ranged from 0 volts all the way up to 450 volts. Now, if you were to tell someone to instruct them to shock someone with 450 volts after getting a question wrong in a memory-based task, no one would do it at all because obviously 450 volts is insanely dangerous. However, if you begin by telling them to just administer them 10 volts, which is a minimal shock, they may do it because really 10 volts doesn't look dangerous at all. And the step between 10 and 20 is the exact same step between 0 and 10. So 10 more volts isn't going to hurt, that's only 10 volts, and 10 volts is harmless. Now this interval keeps on increasing. 10 volts to 20 volts, 20 volts to 30, 30 to 40, and 10 volts seems harmless every time. However, at 50 volts and then 100 volts, the shock can actually cause pain. They keep doing this until they reach 450, and 450 volts is really dangerous. So this process of gradual commitment actually leads someone to believe that the immoral action isn't as bad as it originally seems. Here are some questions on the factors which can affect obedience. Have a go at answering these on another sheet of paper by pausing the video, and then hit play for whenever you're ready to see the answers. Here are the answers. If you got these right, congratulations. I'd advise you to move on to the next lesson, which will be on resisting obedience. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.